Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar this afternoon. I'm going to be handing over to Linda Hammond, who will introduce herself in the webinar, and we'll get started. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A, and we'll respond to them accordingly. Some of the questions that might be of interest to everyone we'll publish, and you'll be able to see people's questions and answers as well. We'll also be having some live polls that we'll be doing during the course of the webinar. What we suggest you do there is to use your QR code reader on your smartphone to take a capture of the QR code and then onto the quick poll on your mobile device. Alternatively, I'll also be publishing the link to the quick poll in the Q&A or announcement section, which will allow you then to click on it and complete it on your PC if you prefer to do that. So thank you once again, and over to Linda. Thank you, Linda.
Hi everybody, I hope you can all hear me. As you can see, the session is about the new normal, and I think it's something that's unusual to all of us. COVID has been a hard taskmaster, and so many businesses have realized that people are the real game changers, not strategies. Getting people to buy into the strategy is, and not buildings. People in the buildings are the important factor. So just a little bit of an outline of today. So I'm Linda Hammond, I'm the founder and CEO of Talk to Us. Renee Roos is with me, she's one of our directors, and she'll be commenting with me. And then there's Charles Nightingale, who's our producer for today's sessions. So really, I think what I want to go through is basically, if you have a look at it, you know, we've been operating in a certain way for a long time, and I think we need to change our way of thinking. We need to become more humanistic in our way of thinking. And I know technology is helping us get along with the working from home issue, but it's really to help people deliver something. So what we're hoping to achieve with this is to build a new normal for the world and specifically around communication. So the construct of today's webinar, and all the webinars, will be a tiny bit about inside Talk to Us. We have to have a marketing pitch in there somewhere. A broad overview to contextualize the topic and the session, some pitfalls and constraints on this topic. How would you overcome those? What would the outcomes of success be? And in between there will be quick polls, and there's also a couple of free giveaways during and straight after the session. So let me kick off then with the first part of the present, which is inside Talk to Us. In a second. So, you know, people often ask us, well, what do Talk to Us do? Well, you know, we build brand confidence, but we build it through your people and with your people, and I think that's a key part. So that's the function, that is the outcome of everything that we do. We do that through four sort of key areas. The first one is we believe in how do you enable strategy, and you enable strategy through communications by and large, but one of the key things you use is branding. So branding is an internal function. It's who are we, what do we look like, who do we think we are, and it talks to the purpose, and the enablement of that purpose is through the strategy and then the people that obviously deliver to the purpose. The next section is really how do we activate that? So great, we've got a strategy, we know what we look like, we know who we want to be when we grow up. How do we activate that? And that's through creating an experience that emotionally connects your various stakeholders to you. So that would be something like a go-to-market strategy, and then your salespeople, how do they connect? So it's gear up, it's activate, and then this is all built on a specific pillar of...
Hi there everybody, it's Renee. The specific pillar is self-awareness. So the bridge between purpose and emotional connection really is self-awareness. To understand who you are, where you are at, and where you want to go to. That is the only way that you can lead and communicate and create confidence in your brand. So the most important message we want to convey here is that change is everything. If you acknowledge that, and if you understand how to lead change, you will be highly effective as a leader. And that's all about reflection.
And that ability to reflect is also where that continuous loop comes in. And so something that's really interesting, you can go do some research on it, is the hero's journey. Have a look at the hero's journey, which is how we arrived with our brand and what heroes go through to be heroes. It's a well-known philosophy of the hero's journey. Go and have a look, there's some great videos on it. We might even send you a link for that. All of this, obviously, is stuck together with integrated communication. If you're not good at communicating and you don't communicate all of these elements well to all of your audience and your stakeholders, you won't succeed. So integrated communication is core to making this whole model work. Tiny bit more about us, just some of our credentials, and we'll flash through these. We're 100% South African owned. We were established in 2000. We have a 4C leadership communication program, which is one of our flagship programs. It's been attended by over 1,500 delegates, and it's gamified as well as in a webinar version. We have 150 plus clients. We've got and have delivered 320 change management programs, probably more by now over the period that we've been in existence. We have delivered 151 communication strategies, and also probably more, and we're an exclusive partner for Net Presenter. We resell their products in South Africa. They're a Dutch-based company. If you want to find more information about us, you can always go and have a look at our website. So where does the rubber hit the road? People often say, well, what do you actually do? Because that sounds just like consulting. Although we actually provide the deliverables and the execution elements as well. So we can help you brand, we can do the graphic design on it, we can do social media, we can do technology. So if you follow all of these things on our website, you'll get a far better flavor of Talk to Us, and so that's inside Talk to Us. So moving right along, we've got our first quick poll, which is what are you hoping to get from this session? So if you have a QR reader on your phone, or if you don't, you can just key in that Talk to Us URL at the bottom. If you've got a QR code reader on your phone, and Charles can help you with that, there's a QR reader for Android, which is a QR Droid, and then there's also one for Apple, which you can, it's called a scanner. If you scan that code in, it'll ask you a couple of questions. If you can answer those questions, we've got a better idea of what you're hoping to achieve from a session. So the questions are, you know, what are you hoping to achieve? Do you want to do tips to improve your own personal ability to communicate? Do you want to obtain a better understanding of the mechanics of communication? Do you want to be able to rate yourself as a personal communicator? And how do you look at communication from a point of view of is it a game changer? So if you can answer those, then Charles will pop us up the results, and then we'll make sure that we cover what the areas are that you're very interested in. Over to you, Charles.
Thanks, Linda. I'll just give it a couple of minutes for the people to complete the questions. When I show the results, you probably need to just share your presentation again, Linda, like last time. It might knock you off.
So while we're waiting for those results to come through, a couple of things that I'd just like to go over. I think at the end of this, if there are specific questions that you have that you haven't answered, or you don't feel that you got the answer that you would have liked to have received through the Q&A, you're more than welcome to email me. We'll send all the participants our email addresses so that if you have queries, you can send us emails about that, and we can answer some of those and see whether there's anything we can assist you with.
Okay, I'm going to pop up the results now. Okay, then so the results are on. Your mic is muted. If you want to participate, you'll need to turn it back on and just share the presentation again, and then you can talk to the results.
Great, thanks, Charles. It seems like there's a couple of people who want to understand a bit more about communication. So let's move right along into the presentation.
Okay, so if you can just share your presentation again, please, Linda, and I'll make it live.
Okay. Maybe just stop unsharing yours, mine won't share.
Okay, you're on screen now, and then if you can share your presentation again, please.
Cool. Right. Thanks for the participation there, folks. Let's just go through really what we're hoping to get out of communication. So the old way of thinking and doing is that communication function is responsible for the success or the failure of the communication in an organization. There's definitely this mindset. You know, it's communication's responsibility. It's not our responsibility to communicate. That's why we've got a communication department. Whether they live in HR or marketing, there's definitely a mindset of communication is their responsibility. The new way of thinking is really individuals, especially leaders in the business, are responsible for the success or failure of communication in an organization. Let's take you through why we believe that. So yes, undoubtedly the messaging and the narrative is often crafted at the executive level. The executives say, well, these are the things that we want the people to understand. This is the purpose we want to have. These are the values that we have. This is important news, breaking news. And this is the narrative, our story that we'd like to share with everybody. So granted, they often provide the input to the message, which is then taken and crafted by communication and pushed out via a communication landscape. What do I mean by a communication landscape? Well, I think you all understand that here in South Africa, our communication landscape is we've got dailies, we've got weeklies, we've got monthlies, and we've got bi-monthlies, and we've got TV, and we've got radio. And if you want a certain piece of news, you know where to go look. So if you want the latest scandal, you'll go and look at You. If you want to understand something about the new budget, you're not going to go look at You. You're probably going to go look at the Financial Mail or the Business Day. So you've got a very clear understanding of the communication landscape. So we're going to give you a bit more information about that shortly. Leadership need to continuously be enforcing and delivering on that narrative. So they need to be aware of exactly what the communication division is pushing out so that they can enforce those messages and comment on them and create that thread of narrative that is spoken about all the time. So here's a great example. We all learned about COVID overnight. The entire country did. And they learned about it because we shut the country down. If the country had not been shut down, how aware do you think everybody would have been about COVID? We're all busy going around it and doing our normal day-to-day task. But that specific action of shutting the country down, which is a leadership exercise, made everybody aware of it in a blink of an eye. There's nobody in this country, I don't think, that doesn't understand that there's something called COVID. So that gives you an understanding how leadership and communication need to work together. I'm not saying you have to do something as drastic as that to get everybody to sit up and pay attention. That was rather drastic, but hey, it worked.
I think another important example in my most recent position in the corporate world, I was part of a turnaround strategy. And the more we communicated with all our stakeholders, and yes, the employees, of course, are important, but communication, when we started to communicate what we were doing and why we were doing it in turning the business around to our customers, to our suppliers, to our bankers, to our investors, it enabled us and empowered us to execute strategy much more effectively. So communication was really at the heart of the strategy turnaround at the end of the day.
So in essence, if we get those 4 things right, we've got a clear message, which is tied to an inspiring narrative. We've got leadership who enforce it and deliver it. We've got a communication landscape that is accessible by everybody and that is in their consumption preferences and speaks to the relevance of the various stakeholders. Our execution of our strategy should be a lot better than if we didn't have that, and that would mean we'd have clean sailing or clear sailing. Great thoughts. However, like most things in life, there are always obstacles. There are always obstacles and barriers that stop us from achieving that. So let's have a look at this first obstacle here, which is really around, the messaging and the narrative.
So it very often happens in organizations that communication about the strategy or the plan is an afterthought. So leaders typically are very adept at putting together the strategy. That's why they were employed. They understand the industry, they understand what needs to be done. So they put together great strategies. But you may be aware that between 60 and 80% of all strategies globally fail. And one of the key reasons for that is that communication that binds everything together is an afterthought, and that we don't give enough attention to making sure that we craft the message and that it gets to the right places.
So the outcome of communication being the outlier or the outlier positioning of it is that messaging is an afterthought. Followers hear one thing and they read another. So which do we trust? And we build a trust deficit trap by not having these two aligned. The impact of the afterthought is obviously not as successful as one would hope. So the outcome of that is there's a perception that communication doesn't work, and if communication doesn't work, then let's cut the budget. That is a bit of a true story that happens in a lot of organizations that we meet with. And I think it would be interesting to understand if you experience that in your organization as well. So we've got a general question here. Correcting other people's written communication almost always is taken as a personal attack on people. Editing documents is often a nightmare with all the offense taken. Any tips on managing this process? The tip on managing that process is to have a very clear messaging library. So what is our messaging on each section of our organization? What is the library? When we talk about our purpose, how do we talk about it? So having clear statements for each one of the key areas in our business that we can really just draw information from so that you don't have to edit it all the time. Absolutely, you're right. And a style guide. How do we like speaking about ourselves? How do we want to speak about ourselves? What is our tone and register? So those things are vital. Good question. Thanks, Kimon. So, sorry, we just have to get ourselves going again. So we've gotten over let's assume that we've gone past this now. Let's have a look at what the giant octopus issue is. The communication landscape that I very briefly spoke about, that I said everybody understands in the country they live in. You need to have understanding of what are you trying to achieve with the communication you're having. So every time you have a conversation with somebody, whether that's as a group or whether it's an individual, you want to achieve something with that conversation. Otherwise, you wouldn't bother having the conversation. And so there are different objectives. So when you do broadcast communication, which is usually usually owned by the communication division in your organization, they want to create awareness. They want to provide information. Let's just explain what's rich communication. So if you understand communication, 7% of the words you use is actually the main, there's only 7% of the words you use formulate your communication structure. The rest of it is really around your tone and your register and what we see, your eye contact, whether we trust what we're hearing. So that rich communication, we call it rich because as humans we're hardwired to look at all of those. We don't just want to hear the words, we want to hear the tone in the register, and we want to see the person that we're speaking to. So if you don't have that, the conversation is not rich. And a rich conversation is used to create a sense of mission, to inspire, to encourage, and to get behavioral change. And then social communication, that's the talk about the business. Is the talk in the business about the business? What are we talking about in the business? Or are we all just scandling all day? And how is that affecting the narrative within the business? So that social aspect of conversation is important because that tells us, is our communication effective? What is being discussed in the business? And we can guide it by changing our communication patterns if we know that it's going in the wrong direction. So what are some of the mechanisms that we use for each one of these? So under the broadcast side, we use newsletters, posters, screensavers, mail clips, etc. Under the mechanistic side, the mechanisms that we use for the rich side is more the face-to-face interaction. They're conferences, they're town hall talks, social gatherings, events and road shows. Those are also the conversations that leadership would have one-on-one with their people or their teams. And then on the social side, the mechanisms that are used are really things like blogging or Yammer or chat rooms or SAP Jam or whatever. And that's really where the organization provides you with feedback. So if you have a tool where you send out a message and they'll give you a thumbs up or they'll comment on it, it's a feedback loop for you to understand how that communication message was received and how it has landed. Now that communication landscape has to be set up and known by everybody in the organization. Where do I go for what type of communication? How do I access that library of documents, which gives me all the pieces of information that I need in a structured way? And it needs to be quite a deliberate attempt before it'll work. So I think just a little bit about the transition, and perhaps Renee can help us talk about that. You know, when it comes to transition, it is the silver bullet.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, Linda spoke about all the communication types and mechanisms that should make up the communication landscape in the organization. The key message for us is that at the end of the day, everything in the organization is about change. If you have the serious capability for change leadership, you'll be able to successfully transition your organization. Strategy is about change. So you've got the status quo and you want to move the organization to a different place. Without communication, you will not be able to successfully do that. It cannot be an afterthought. It has to be a deliberate and structured process using this communication landscape that Linda is referring to.
Thanks, Renee. Right, let's just take a look at the sea monster and what the issues are around this. Oh dear. When you have a look at most organizations, they start with maybe a board, I don't know, maybe maximum 14 people. And then they have a team of executives. So, you know, the one-to-one communication there is quite rich. But every time you pass a message down, the next level down only retains 60% of the message. So when the board speak to the executives, they only retain 60% of that message. Not only that, they also have their own interpretation of the message, which they then share with the management team. If you don't have a good communication landscape, which has all the necessary mechanisms, whereby gives you a format for which communication takes place, you leave it just to the executive team and their interpretation, and remember they now have a diluted message. Then when you look at the management team, who are now going to speak to the frontline staff, they're only going to get 21% of the message. So by the time it gets to your customer, they're only getting 12%. Of what your purpose is. They're only experiencing 12% of your processes and procedures, and therefore that is not a good outcome. I think it leads to brand degradation. people will walk away because they're not experiencing whatever it is that you wanted them to experience, and a lot of that is because of lack of communication. So you'll see there's a blue circle around that middle part, and that really speaks to a lot of what we call the missing middle. So the management will either take the communication that is given to them by the executives exactly as it is and tell the frontline staff, okay, read this, but it's meaningless to them. It hasn't got any meaning because it's created for management's purpose. Management's purpose is to enable their people, not to do the work. Their frontline staff are to do the work. And I think that's where a big problem comes in, is that it's not contextualized for that next level down. So that huge gap there, which we call the missing middle, is really fraught with danger. It's not only dilution of message, it's incorrect interpretation, it's withholding information because information is power. It's there's not a script, it's not contextualized for that audience category. So those are all key areas that are of huge concern when you're communicating, and that must be taken into consideration. Contents error. So then our last disempowering character is Captain Blackbeard. Comes sailing in with a speed.
What we really want to depict here is, as we have said throughout this presentation, that communication is at the heart of everything. If you want to translate purpose into strategy, if you want to make sure that your culture and your strategy are integrated with each other, if you want to make sure that you communicate the outcomes, the results back to the decision makers, all of that is subject to a proper and deliberate communication process in the organization, and most often we take it for granted. I was saying to Linda earlier today that in my corporate life I have participated in many strategy sessions, and in every single one of them where we did a SWOT analysis, communication came out as a weakness. So we know these things, and yet we don't attend to them. We think that communication is an afterthought. And the message we want to get across really is that it is at the heart of everything.
So those are some of the pitfalls, and now we want to just do another quick poll. So what we want you to understand here is, what is the weakest point in your organization's communication ability? Where do you think they could improve dramatically? And if they could improve dramatically, what would the areas be? So Charles, I'll hand back to you now. And once you've got some feedback on that, you can share it with everybody.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Let's give everyone a couple of minutes to put the results in, or the options in. Okay, let me get the results for us quickly. Okay, I'm going to put it onto the screen now. Just remember, Linda, we might have to put your presentation back on again after this. Okay, so there we have the results on the screen. I'll post the link to the results in the Q&A chat area as well. But I'll hand back to you now, Linda. You can put your presentation back on, please.
Just wait.
You can just turn your mic on and your presentation, please, Linda.
Okay, Charles, do you want to maybe just give some feedback? I can't pick up that graph here on my side. I'm not getting it. So maybe you'll just give people some feedback as to what was said.
Okay, so there we have the results on the screen now. What is the weakest point in your organization's communication ability? Content alignment and message trust seems to be two issues. And then lastly, the last one, communication actions. So thanks, Linda.
Thanks. Yeah, those are always interesting. We find that happens quite often. The communication trust, and then you have a trust deficit and everybody just rather switches off than believes in anything.
Okay, if you can just activate your presentation. There we go. Thank you.
I also think that comes back to what we said earlier. If your communication strategy isn't deliberate and structured, then this is exactly what will happen, this misalignment. So every leadership group in the organization will have a different message that they convey. And at the end of the day, it is so diluted when it gets to the shop floor where the execution should take place, the strategy doesn't get executed.
Which is quite sad in a lot of instances. So we're just going to move on now. Right, so now we understand what the obstacles are. Let's have a look at some of the things we can do to overcome them. So if we can get rid of the rocks, we'll find the golden key. If we can get rid of the giant octopus, we can get a sailor's hat. If we can get rid of the sea monster, we'll get the map to the hidden treasure. And then we just have to get past this guy, and we need a compass to get past him. So let's have a look at some of these things. So the golden key, I think I'll just pop up this so that you remember what it was about. Remember, we were talking about we're an outlier in the executive team. Communication is always shunned, they're the last to know, etc. One thing to all communicators is don't accept the position of being an outlier, be strategic. You know, take a strategic brief, produce a strategic communications plan, and in order to help you with that, there's a script which is a quick guide to taking a brief, which is on our website under the resources. You can download that, it's a free script, and it's actually quite a handy tool to ensure that your communication plans are not just puffery. They are based on solid strategic intent, and so we think that's very worthwhile. Yes, I agree with the anonymous person. Internal communications cannot fix culture, okay, but it is often blamed for it. You're quite right, and it cannot fix it, but it can influence it. So there are very few things that can fix culture. You know, culture is established and it's weaved into the fabric of the business and its history and all the people that have always been there. It's very difficult to switch culture from A to B overnight. You can influence. So you can say this area of culture is a problem. And if I continuously push a certain narrative or I continuously have slightly different communication, I can then change it slightly and modify it, but you're never ever going to change it completely because you know what people are like. There are things that are stuck there forever. And it's interesting because the concept that you're talking about now is a lot of stuff about neuroscience, which is not the topic for today, but I'll just talk briefly about it for 2 minutes. If you have a look, you know, neuroplasticity is a very common thing nowadays, and it's used a lot, especially in therapy. So if you were either an alcoholic or you had a bad childhood, you create a different narrative, and that different narrative eventually shapes your brain slightly different. So that neuroplasticity is quite important, and that changes and modifies people's mindset about certain things, and that's what you're trying to do. And that's very much left for leadership. It's important that you do understand what neuroplasticity is and how you can use it through narrative theory in your communications to make a change in culture. Thanks, Madeleine. I hope that helped you a bit. So let's just go back now and see what we get if we get the sailor's hat. So once again, just a reminder, this was about the communication landscape and how do you get a better communication landscape. And really, I think everything in your communication landscape must speak to the concept of you have to speak to the head. In other words, make sure they can comprehend it, make sure that they understand the situation, make sure they understand the messaging that you want to get across. And how do you do that? You do that through paraphrasing, which is one of the techniques we'll teach you in the next session. That you speak to the heart. In other words, it must be something that is aligned to their purpose and something that they believe in. Otherwise, you won't get their buy-in. That you speak to the hands. In other words, what must I do with this piece of information that I've given you?
And then something for instinct or gut feel. At the end of the day, that's a very important tool that the leaders and the communicators in an organization use and to make sure that their communication is aligned to the culture of the business or restructures that culture.
So it was a good time to pop up that query, Madeleine. All right, now let's have a look at the map. So we've gotten past the octopus, we've gotten past the rocks. We're now trying to bypass the monster. And if you recall, the sea monster was this missing middle. How do we move our way through past this missing middle? How do we overcome that? And that's really three things. So when you measure communication, you measure the process. In other words, what tools do we use? How do we get the message out? How do we make sure that the content is delivered in the consumption preferences of that generation? So some people will only want cell phones, some people will only want paper. So that's the process. You have to measure the process to understand if your communication is effective. Then you measure the content.
So the important aspect that we've got there on the slide around that is that you need to make sure, obviously, that your communication is cost effective, but that's not the most important. It becomes cost effective if it is effective communication. So to be effective, it needs to be relevant to a diverse audience. So as Linda said, we need to be sensitive to the various audiences that we communicate with and the mechanism that we reach each of those audiences in our organization, or if it's external stakeholders in the way that we communicate with them. An important thing as well is the narrative or the story that we are telling need to be well crafted, and we need to make sure, obviously, as I said earlier, that it's deliberate. And lastly, communication becomes a very effective tool in organization if it is interactive and it builds relationships. So we need to make sure that the mechanisms we use lends itself to that.
So remember, we were just talking about the ability to measure. We measure process, we measure content, and do people recall the message that you sent out? Because if they can't even recall it, well, then there was no point. And recall often relies on design or interesting, catching ways of showing it, so it's quite visual. And then how do we get adoption? How do we get people to buy into it? Because that's the other thing that is really important if you want effective communication. And this is where you provide a breadcrumb trail of where to go for what information, and when they're uncertain of doing something. So if they've heard something along the grapevine and they want to just go and check it, do they know where to go? Which, as you can see now, takes you back to that communication landscape. And you can measure this by seeing how often people go from one point to another. And especially with what is available now and a lot of the tools that you've got, which is artificial intelligence, which is the feedback loops that you've got, you can often see how people have come to a certain conclusion. And it's important that you have this adoption and that you have this ability to communicate with all the relevant stakeholders, because it needs to be aligned to the statutory requirements of in Section 8, there's a whole section about how you need to align to your communication to make sure it's effective. If you get these three right, process, content, and adoption, you will have an impact. So you will be able to change culture, you will be able to change behaviors and get people to adopt new ways of working. But the measurement criteria is not that instant. So impact you only see over a period of time. So it's more of a longitudinal research piece than the others, which you quickly make a change and ensure that you're on the right path. So now we have the map, we've got the hack, we've got the key. Now we just need to get past Blackbeard, and this is, okay, and this is the compass. And the compass really, if you recall this slide, Ms. Renee said it's the glue. This part here is where we actually point out that communication, and this is in the handout book that we give you, that the communication that is delivered through your leadership provides an experience. And that experience generates an attitude. You can't always see the attitude, but it influences the attitude, but you do see it in behaviors. So when that behavior achieves the behavior occurs, it's usually as a result of the attitude. So it does come out, and ultimately it will create the culture that you have driven. And there you see, I think, Madeleine, you were saying how your communication links back to your culture, but it is a process where leadership have to go through it to get that right. So if you get those right, you go from messaging a narrative to smooth sailing. How wonderful would that not be? So we've got one last quick poll. We've got about 5 minutes left. And what do you think your main communication strength is as an individual? What do you think makes you a good communicator? Let's just give that a few minutes. I'll hand back to you, Charles.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Some of the feedback we got during the last poll is that we moved a bit quickly. People felt they didn't have time to get out the phones and scan it in and whatnot. So perhaps in the future webinars, we can put a little countdown clock on the screen and give them about 30 seconds or 60 seconds perhaps, and maybe play some music in the background. So we'll give everyone a chance to do that. I have also sent through the link to poll 3 in the chat window, and I'll just access the results window and put that up in a moment. So 10, there's music playing. Next time we will have music playing.
The question is also always what type of music? We'll play plenty of funk music, some nice background stuff.
I think an important thing perhaps that I can mention while you're busy completing the poll. In the previous slide, Linda spoke about measurement. I think the good news for any one of you who reports to line managers or senior executives, or for any executives that's on the webinar, that always want to know what is the return on investment? How do we measure the success of this investment, this change management program or communication program? The good news is that everything can be measured. And our personal experience with doing that, so even the things that we call the soft stuff can be measured, and we can prove that it delivers investment, return on your investment. So at Talk to Us, we use a couple of those tools, and we will talk about that in later webinars as we go along to use to convince decision makers and executives why investment in these soft things is important.
Okay, Linda, I did send the link through to your WhatsApp as well for the results if you want to see the results on your phone. And I'll display them on the screen and let everyone have a look at them. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. See, we've got more attendees and people participating, which is absolutely fine. Let me just make it bigger, and I'm going to share it now. Seems to be a three-way split at this stage.
Yeah, I think the fact checking is important, and I think the not letting personal filters get in the way, that's also very important, because that is a key problem, especially in a audience where we've got a lot of diversity. So I think those are key. I think on the measurement side, where Renee said you can measure everything, the key to that is, though, you need to decide what the outcome is that you want right at the beginning. So, you know, it's often the case that when the whole thing is over and done, people said that isn't what I expected, but you never really said what you expected in the first place. So the script methodology of writing a briefing document explains that, and it makes sure that the measurement is the number one thing that you put in upfront. What are you hoping to achieve? You know, to say I want more people to read a certain article. Well, okay, how many people are reading it now? How many more people would you like to read it at the end of this campaign that you're going to do, or the end of this communique that you're going to do? So I think those things are important as well. So can I share again now, Charles, or you?
Yeah, please share again, and I'll make your presentation live. At the moment, they can see you.
Cool. Should I get this back up?
Okay, you're live again.
Thank you. Okay, so with the last few minutes that we have left, what does success look like if you get all of this right? And I think that's the interesting part here. Well, the first thing is that you have a shared common purpose. If you've got your communication right, everybody understands the purpose. They understand how that purpose fits into their job function. So it's all good and well to say you want to be the number one provider of banking services or of cleaning services, but unless they know what they need to do in their role of how to deliver that, it's like a pie in the sky wish. The next thing is you have a comprehensive stakeholder following. People will follow your brand because it is something where every single time they go back there, they get the same experience. The staff will experience the same thing as well.
And then thirdly, like I spoke about measurement earlier, effective communication will lead to improved organizational effectiveness and achievement of your strategy. So communication creates accountability. We create forums where people need to come, where we communicate to people their targets, they participate in setting those targets, and there are forums where people need to come and give feedback about their performance. So without communication, we can't create that accountability, and we won't have the achievement of the strategy that we have set out to achieve. And then lastly, communication creates empowered teams that can make decisions. So with feedback loops in place, as per the previous discussion that we had, we can track progress or lack thereof, and we can make sure that we respond effectively.
So I see there's a query that's come up. They're saying an observation that not sure that one of the results updated properly. Charles, maybe you'd like to just respond to that?
Yeah, I was just about to make that comment as well. So I've got the results up on my screen again. I'm going to share it again, Linda. If you want to update on your phone as well, you'll see the update. But in essence, I think we just need to look at giving people enough time, like we got feedback earlier. It seems to be, we seem to be moving too quick on that. Let me just make it live. Okay, Linda, it's live on the screen now if you want to talk to it.
Okay, I actually didn't know what the numbers were before the time, but I hope it's evident now as to where your response is. Maybe we cut the thing a bit, I mean the survey short. So, but in essence, what we're saying is the highest thing that you believe you're good at is you don't let personal filters get in the way. The second highest is you fact check information. The third highest is you display empathy when having conversations. So those are people's strengths that they believe they have with personal communication. The reason we put that poll right at the end is, Charles, if you can just let me share again.
Okay, you can share now.
Cool. Is The thing that we're going to be giving away today is a book. It's a self-help guide on your own communication skills. You can rate your own communication personality. So I forgot to push my button one more time. What success looks like is a confident brand. So I have to add that, sorry, because that's like majorly important. But the book that we'll be giving away today, just to get back to that, is about your own personal communication skills and how do you speak to others to influence them. So it is a personal book. It is not a workbook for organizations. It's for you as an individual. And it is very useful. It's about 70 pages. It's got a lot of great exercises in it that you can do. You can identify your own personal communication style. You can look at things which trip you up when you're communicating. You can look at how you can improve them. So it's really a great workbook to go through to understand your own communication styles. And as far as I'm aware, that'll be available on Cricket at, Charles, at 3 o'clock, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It'll be available at 3. I'll send everyone an email that registered for the webinar as well, just to make it easier to find.
Yeah, so I think if we will also be sending you a feedback questionnaire, so you can let us know. And your feedback today on saying that the surveys were too quick, that's great. Any other information that you'd like to send us through, we'd love to hear. And if you've got any specific questions you'd like to ask now, we can push them through the Q&A tool, and Charles will make them live if there are some that we need to have a look at. Other than that, thanks for attending our session. The next one is on the 28th, which is next Thursday a week, and it's the power of leadership communication. So we'll be talking there about how leaders communicate and that last little domino effect, which we showed you, the way in which they take a message out is important to actually achieving the result you're wanting. So we'll be discussing that at the next one. So we'd love you to join us. I think you know that you understand how to book for it. It's on our website. If you go onto our website and you click on the webinars at the top, you'll get all the webinars that we'll be hosting moving forward. You'll get the giveaway for this session. And then any queries you've got, please let us know. And if you've got any questions for today's session, pop them through to Charles and he'll manage them and we'll be able to answer them. Other than that, I suppose we can go live now, Charles, and Renee and I can wave at everybody. And
thanks for attending, everyone.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yes, thanks for attending, and we do look forward to another time when we can have a chat with you and catch up on where you're at. And please feel free to send us something if you need some questions answered or if you'd like some information. I'm sure we can help.
Okay, thank you everybody and goodbye.
Cheers.